I had the opportunity it was probably about, no, it wasn't this time, a little bit over a year ago, to speak in a class at Cal State for a good friend of mine. And he told me that the class was going to take place in DDH, Dorothy Donohue Hall, DDH H106. Strike that. H146. DDH H146. So I show up and go into DDH, know exactly where that is, know exactly where the H is. I'm walking down the hallway and I see room 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, and the hallway ends. And it's the only H hallway. And the room was 146 that I'm supposed to go to. So I pull up my text and I'm looking and okay, it does say 146. To make matters worse, my phone's about to die. So I send him a quick text and I say, I'm here, cannot find the room. I'm in hallway H, cannot find the room. Phone's about to die. Look for me. Send. So then I think, do you carry a charger on you? I don't carry a charger on me. I still don't carry a charger on me, which makes me question my intellectual capacity now that I say that. So I'm going, what in the world do I do? But I'm on a college campus, so somebody somewhere has a charger, right? Or there's got to be a charging station or something. So I'm running, and actually I think the last time I spoke in his class was in the science building. So I start heading that way thinking, but there aren't any H hallways, but I just think, okay, I'm going to go in that direction. I go over there. Togo's is there in the science building. So I go into Togo's and I say, I need a phone charger. And one of the girls who worked there gave me hers. She had no reason to. And I'm leaving with it. I'm like, thank you. Like running away because there aren't any outlets. So I go out in the hallway. I have to find an outlet, plug my phone in long enough to say, check the science building. You're not here. Headed back to DDH. Send. So I give her back the phone charger, go running back over to DDH. He's standing in the middle, laughing hysterically at me. As it turns out, in the H hallway, you guys will have to check tomorrow or next week when you go back. It goes 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 146. You've had a class there. Oh my gosh. Which standards for mathematical practice did I use? Take out your cards. Which ones? There are 8 of them. Which standards of mathematical practice did I have to use that day? One. I could have said, I'm gone. I'm not getting paid for this. I did look for and make use of structure, but the contractors did not, right? I used appropriate tools. I should have critiqued. That's what I should have done is think, well, okay, logically, it should be 106, but let's disregard all logic, right? My challenge to you is to create students who will be able to attack that situation, right? I very possibly mentioned this last time, but I don't. When it comes to perseverance, when it comes to critical thinking, our students do not possess it at this point. We need to train them to do that. I was in a presentation talking about this, and one of the teachers there started laughing. And she said, if you have children, you know that what you apply in your classroom sometimes translates to your children, sometimes does not. Sometimes you raise your children differently than you raise your students. She started laughing, though, and she said, my daughter is a student at Berkeley. And she called me over the weekend because she isn't feeling well, and she called me in Bakersfield to find the name of an urgent care that she could go to in Berkeley. And she was laughing because she's like, she's passive, she wants to be fed, she doesn't have the critical thinking skills, all of these things that we're complaining. She's a student at Berkeley. And so we're all laughing. Everybody was laughing except me. And I said, so did you do it for her? And she said, absolutely. We trained them, do we not? Yes. Why would she do it herself when all she has to do is call mom? Why will they ever attack a situation if they know you will attack it for them? Why will they ever go for the difficult solution when they know the easy one is right around the corner? One of the teachers I was speaking to said, but they like passive learning. Nope, they don't. They like being engaged. And we'll talk a lot about that. They like the critical thinking. They like success in it, but that's the situation that they strive for and thrive in. How about a sample math lesson? Woo! Yes! Math! You guys ready? Okay. You are going to be my students, and I'm going to approach this as if you were my students. You will need paper. You may have seen this before. You don't need to read the text. You don't need to read the text. In fact, you will get this in a handout. You will get this in a handout, but all you need is this for now. You'll get it in a handout. Don't worry. Anything that you really have to read up close, I will provide for you. Here's the situation. The situation is that in this magical, hypothetical world, you're going to be allowed to go on a field trip. This world does not exist anymore, right? You're going to be able to go on a field trip, and you have 3 possible destinations from which to choose. You could go to the zoo, the aquarium, or the science museum. So you have the science museum, the aquarium, or the zoo from which to choose. I want you to think for just a moment about where you would prefer to go and why. Where would you think for just a moment? Where would you like to go?
Science Museum.
Science Museum? Why?
Probably more I would think Science Museum hands-on activities that are related to science. I might actually, for me, the hands-on thing would be what I would.
Manipulatives. Okay.
It's
I would learn
closer,
there.
and so we'll get to spend more time there.
It's closer, so we get to spend more time there.
The zoo.
Zoo. Why?
I'm from San Diego.
Oh.
So
Oh.
that's what I remember.
Yeah. We love animals. So yeah, we're thinking of calm. So we're not choosing the zoo. Nothing against calm. That was mean. But if it was San Diego Zoo. What else? What's another reason to go to the zoo? You get to walk around. See the animals outside in our beautiful weather. Yes? When I use this with students, they very often say the zoo for the opposite reason, because it's further from school and they'll be able to stay gone longer. They say that very, very often. Would anyone like to go to the aquarium? I love aquariums. Why?
Anything with water.
Anything with water. Yes. Yes. Water? What is that? Yes.
Because the Science Museum has an aquarium. It's so cool!
I didn't know that. She's adding information. I love it. Okay.
Of course, it's really far.
So from the get-go, we have students pulling information. They're drawing inferences based on their own experiences, right? They're kind of thinking about what they would want to do. Where would our administration want us to go? Why do you say that? Because it's closer, the buses. It depends on the cost. what else does it depend on?
Curriculum.
Right, right. What is it that we want our students to learn from this, and where will that best be accomplished, right? Okay, so we have lots of factors involved here. I am distributing, excuse me, a handout that has a student, has this on one side, the same image that's being projected. On the other side, it has a class list, and it has their first and second choice of destinations. So on the bottom you see a question that reads, based only on the results of the class votes, where would you recommend the class go on the field trip? Show your work or explain how you found your answer. I want everyone working individually will have an opportunity to talk. So you only need that one side of the paper. And I realize that some of you are still working. My question is, how are you figuring out your answer? There are different ways to attack this problem. Raise your hand to tell me a way that you are attacking the math. Please.
Well, I put first and second, and then I put zoo, science museum, and aquarium. And then I counted how many first choice wanted the zoo, and then first choice science museum and first choice aquarium. I put down the numbers. Then I did the same thing with second choice. And then I haven't came to the conclusion because I haven't, but then I would look at the numbers and see.
So are you essentially going to do the most overall votes?
I don't know.
Possibly, depending on.
I just put down the numbers and then
Okay.
I could see what conclusion I can draw from that.
Okay, yes.
I set it up the same way, but then I added the two, or I figured out the percentage of their first choice and the percentage of the second choice, and then I added the 2%
Okay.
to see which one got more.
She added math to a math problem. I love it. Yes.
Okay, I followed both these lovely ladies, and I took the average, and so it would be, should it be the average student, this is what I'm fighting with right now. Should it be the one with the most votes, like the popular vote, and then everybody else gets screwed, I'm sorry. Or should we just take the average vote?
So the overall vote, or should it be the most first choice votes? Lots of different ways to attack this. Plot spoiler, because I'm not giving you enough time to work this out. Depending on how you attack it, you will arrive at a different answer. The most common ways to approach this are to weigh one vote more heavily than the other. Another way is to vote or to count only first place. And a third way is to count overall. Those are the three most common approaches. But all of these approaches are valid because it's however you wanted to attack it. Each of those three results in a different location. So you might choose zoo, you might choose aquarium, and you might choose the science museum. I have also had teachers who have said, and forgive me for forgetting the name, there are two students, William and Charlie, who didn't follow the rules. This is what one of my jaded teachers said. William wanted science museum and Charlie wanted the aquarium, so we're going to the zoo. I also had a teacher who said, everybody voted this way, so we're going to go the other way, and I don't remember what it was. So everyone voted for, let's say, the zoo, so we're going to go to the science museum because, not to be mean, but because clearly they have less experience with that. They are more comfortable going to the zoo. I want to expose them to something different. I think that's a valid argument. I think that's a great argument. And the students don't ever have to know that that was the result, right? Or that was how the choice was made. Problem is with the question, it says based on this. So that's the only reason that answer gets a little bit sticky. because whatever your answer is, it has to be justified by this sheet of paper right here. Okay? But all of those answers are correct. This is, and we're not finished with it yet, but this is a smarter balanced performance task. And on their rubric, they say that all answers that use this information as their foundation are correct. Okay? They have to show their work or explain it in words. So as long as the person reading this can determine how they reach that conclusion, and it's based on the information on the page, then it's correct. Okay? All right. So now we want to figure out the answer to a next question. And this next question is, I will read this to you. Now, crazy, I can't even read this. Now we will, a word about the costs of the trip. Sure, yes, it does say think. Now we're going to think about, and I'm going black screen for just a minute here. No, I'm not. I'm going back here for just a moment. So if we want to think about the cost involved in this, we mentioned something earlier that was monetary. Somebody said it again, the entrance fee, admission, transportation, gas, all of that. What I want you to do is I want you to talk at your table, I want you to talk to people close to you about what kind of math you're going to need to use, and what information do you need, and what math are you going to use to figure out the cost of each of the 3 destinations, okay? Talk to your neighbors.
The first thing, I would do admission fee, how many students, so that's multiplication.
How about the driver?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a base fee. You get to have the bus for the day.
Right.
And then they add a per mile fee.
What's one question you need answered in order to figure out the cost? Tell me one. Yes, ma'am. How much money is already available? How much money is available and how much needs to be provided? Yes. What else?
Cost per student?
Cost per student. With that, we need to know cost per adult and how many?
And how many chaperones you're required to have.
Chaperones?
Cost per adult?
Cost per adult? You said something
Is there a
else.
discount?
What about the
Driver.
cost per gas?
Gas?
Flat rate?
Transportation fees?
Lunches,
Food?
Parking?
Parking? Okay, so let me give you the answers to some of your questions. So you have the distance on that first page, but I'm reminding you of the distance. We have the bus charge. We have the entrance fee. We have teacher and parent helpers do not pay the entrance fee. There are 30 students in the class. Only 1 bus is needed. The bus charge is for the entire busload of students, not for each student. Each student will pay the same amount. The school will pay the first $200 of the trip. So the school is paying $200. The rest of the expense has to be divided evenly among the students. So my question to you is, how much will each student have to pay to attend the 3 different field trips? How much will each student, because we're dividing the student fee evenly among the 30 students?
And then 1 bus, 6 times the 30 again. Huh. And then,
Right?
nothing about food.
This is for the aquarium. For the aquarium. Okay, now we'll do, that's all the costs you said, right? Just admission and the bus.
Without necessarily talking about yourself, but in your groups, raise your hand if there was a benefit to input from other people in your group. Like maybe you missed something or the person next to you missed something. And so raise your hand if there was a benefit to outside contribution. Okay. It's incredibly important that you as the teacher see that, but it is equally, if not more important, for your students to see that. Very often, people ask me how to keep students under control when you have them do group work. It is incredibly important that they see that their individual work benefits from the group work. But it's also important for you as the teacher to make sure that their individual work will benefit from the group work, right? So you have to circulate the whole time. But there has to be a burden. So now that they've done group work, there's going to be some individual work that they have to do, and that outcome will be dependent on how effective it is. So you have to see that that's important, but they have to see it also so that they have more buy-in and they're not just sitting there talking about something else. You also don't give them very long. I would never, I work with high schoolers predominantly. I would never give them more than 10 minutes to work in a group, ever, ever. Now that you do something independently for a few minutes, now maybe you go back to collaborate with other people, but they don't have that focused intellectual stamina to stay on topic. Folks, if I let you stay for longer than 10 minutes, you wouldn't be still talking about math. You wouldn't. That's not the society in which we live. That's not how it is. Okay. Lots of math involved in this. And traditionally in my math class, what I would have done is I would have told my students how to set up the problem. I would even have done one for them, right? Traditionally, I would have figured out the aquarium and then they figured out the other two. This is a 6th grade performance task.
So we did it in 5th.
Mm-hmm.
We did it in 5th.
Mm-hmm. What? I'm sorry? In 5th grade. It is, Smarter Balance published this as a 6th grade performance task. That's great. They can do it. They can do it. They need the time to work with it. And then as students struggle with something, or if a group leaves the students at the destination and forgets to bring them back, that's when you go around and intervene as needed. You scaffold as needed instead of doing all of the thinking for them. That's where the big difference is. You let them struggle, purposeful struggle. You let them explore. You let the information that you provide them, you let it answer their own questions. Well, I want to know how many students. Well, I want to know how much the entrance fee is. Oh, well, let me tell you, instead of feeding it in advance. Okay? So now the next question, and we're not going to do this, but the next question then asks them, it says, Daniel thinks that it will cost less to go to the zoo because the entrance fee is only $250 per student. Do you agree or disagree? Explain. So now you have to use the math that you computed with question number 2 to argue against Daniel's reasoning. In the Smarter Balance rubric, it says that if this answer is correct, based on incorrect math here, it is still okay. So if they messed up on this problem, they did some computational error that really made the zoo less expensive, and they said, yes, he's correct because of, then that answer can still be correct because they're still pulling on this evidence, okay? Well, this is a performance task, so this is supposed to be scored by the teacher, and it says it on the rubric. On the rubric, it says, if a correct answer based on, so yes. And this whole lesson with the rubric is on your website. So if you want to go and look at how that is structured, you can absolutely do that. Number 4 then asks you to write a note to your principal, no, to your teacher. Write a note to your teacher using everything that you've looked at, the cost and the class votes and everything. Where would you recommend? And so any answer is correct as long as they pull evidence from the task itself. We're going to talk about assessments. We said earlier that we're going to talk about this. When you think of assessment, I want you to write everything that comes to mind. I'm giving you a minute. On your mark, get set, go. We're going to add 10 seconds, but I'm going to use a different word and see if something different comes out on your paper. So now I'm going to use the word test. 10 more seconds. On your mark, get set, go. Look back at what you wrote. When I point at you, I want you to tell me one thing that you wrote down, either for assessment or test, just one thought that came to mind.
Brain freeze.
Anxiety. Should be used to drive instruction and pre-test and remediation and post. Accountability.
Pre, during, and post-assessment.
Depth of knowledge.
Pass or fail.
And I love that when I walked around and when you spoke out, none of you mentioned grading. You didn't mention grading.
I did hear grade for grade book under test.
Did you? Under test. Very often when we say test, we think grade. When we think assessment, we don't necessarily. Students almost always connect any kind of assessment with a grade. So if you're not grading something, then it's not important. If you are grading something, then that's when we have the anxiety, and it's a pass or fail, it's high stakes, it's all right now. But is that what assessment really is? Should be, supposed to be. I'm hearing a lot of interesting things. On your piece of paper, I want you to list every assessment that comes to mind, whether it's something that you use or have used in the past, or somebody who teaches next door to you uses, or something from your fourth grade class when you were in 4th grade. Make a list of every assessment. Look at your list. Assessments should be an independent performance of the skill. An unscaffolded, independent performance of the skill. Look at your list and mark somehow which ones are independent performances of the skill. Are they authentic assessments? And then my second challenge is, does it drive instruction? Does it drive your instruction? We're going to watch a short video in which it's a lesson study video where a group of teachers created a lesson, then they have one teacher modeling the lesson, and then they, very much like you have done, and then they debrief after and discuss it. And then after we watch this brief video, and the quality is interesting, but afterward we will talk about what they have seen and how that relates to our classroom expectations and the assessments and assignments that we give. So they have this worksheet where if you have 1 triangle or 2 triangles or 3, and you have to establish how many students are able to sit around that grouping. It will get louder, I promise. So now the students are working. The worksheet has 1 triangle, 2 triangles, 3 triangles, 4 triangles, and what that does to the number of students. What do you anticipate, or what did you see happened as a result of that? What do you think?
They could probably pick up the pattern, but what came to mind when I saw this brought back something that happened in the classroom. When I told my students, if you got to go to McDonald's with you and your family to McDonald's and everybody ordered something, what did you get? Well, what they've been conditioned at home, they bring to the classroom. Well, we're only going to buy one soda, you can refill it. So not everybody needs a soda.
Oh, funny.
So it was like, wait a minute, you're right. Because in your world,
Oh, that's
what you, I can't tell them they're wrong. So when I saw that, I don't care how many people, you're gonna all fit. Where you
Well, I could fit 10
Yeah,
around this
because all my
triangle.
best friends with me, you know.
Oh, how funny.
Logically, there's only so many.
So you would
seats.
have to establish only one seat per straight edge. How funny.
So my
How funny.
students, I have to think that way, because what would they do at home?
And that's I believe that that's the biggest difference between veteran teachers and new teachers, is we have had so much experience of that going into a lesson, we think, oh, how many ways is this going to go wrong, right? Yeah. What else did you see with that worksheet? Let me give you a different example and see if you can pull this. Go ahead.
There was several answers.
Several possible answers. Yes.
So I think that allows them to be creative.
It did.
It seemed like they were talking to each other, just writing it down and
The next step.
on there yet.
And a lot of that is showing your students, you've just spoken it, just write the words that you spoke. They get intimidated by putting it on paper, and we'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon as well. My son, actually I think he was in 3rd grade when this happened, where he would have his math worksheet that he had, and it was a pretty good math worksheet that he would bring home, but he'd just whiz through these bottom 4 questions, and they were word problems. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's brilliant. And then eventually I thought, wait a second, is he really? And so I'd ask him, how do you know which function, which operation to use? Well, one of them is addition, one is subtraction, one is multiplication, one is division. So he just had to always, there's one of each. So he just had to, it eliminated a lot of that critical thinking for it. The worksheet itself eliminated a lot of that critical thinking. Think about this worksheet. They were supposed to be recognizing mathematical patterns, not the worksheet pattern. Do you see the difference? They saw the pattern on the worksheet, that the pattern on the worksheet said 1, 2, 3, and it said 2, 4, 6. And so they just followed the worksheet pattern, but they didn't take that learning into what it meant in physical reality. So one thing that they talk about in the discussion is, why did we do 1, 2, 3, 4? Why not choose 9 and 12 and 17 and just random numbers so that they would see the mathematical pattern and there would not be a worksheet pattern? I think that's brilliant. At the end of the discussion, they eliminate the worksheet. They decide, why did we even give them numbers? Let's just give them the tiles to play with and have them just kind of explore and realize that way.
Did they give the question in writing, or just put that on the board?
They put the question on the board. What they don't do that I would do, and this is a me thing. You saw when she had the expectations on the board, and the top said discovering patterns, something to that something like that. I wouldn't tell them that. I would not tell them, you're supposed to be looking for a pattern. I want them to go, oh wait, there's a pattern here. How much more effective would that be for them, for that self-discovery? So I would eliminate that and just put the question, what do you see when you add a seat, or however the question was phrased. So taking that conversation, looking at your assessment list, I want you to think about the worksheets that you use in class, the assignments that you have in class, how the textbook establishes these situations and limits your ability to allow them to reach that level of creativity and exploration, right? Because our textbooks spoon feed so much more than they did before, and they've gotten really long and cumbersome. Here's my argument. Several years ago, an administrator came to me and said, I need some Common Core questions to use in different classrooms. I need some Common Core questions. And I said, it doesn't matter what the question is if you've fed the answer. So I can't give you a Common Core textbook. I'm going to say this to all of you. The curriculum doesn't matter. It's the way you teach it. The curriculum doesn't matter. You did not need new textbooks. I don't know if you got them, but you didn't need them. You needed to shift the instruction to make it student-driven if it wasn't already. I'm talking globally. I'm not talking about you and in your class. I'm talking globally. But we need a shift in instruction and it to be student-driven rather than baby-stepped through. That's the big difference. One last thing to think about. Very often, those worksheets and that textbook is in the form of homework. And so I really want you to think about to what end? With everything, every worksheet, every textbook you use, every assignment you give, the fact that you're assigning 37 odd questions, and you might have a valid reason for why, but you have to know why, to what end, behind everything you do.